Hi, I'm Simon, and I'm here today with Leaf Filters, and we're going to show you how we shot a nighttime bar scene using various gels and diffusions. So this is a nighttime bar scene. It was actually shot during the day. Because we're just trying to do a night scene during the day, we're just putting up some blacks just to try and make the bar a bit darker. As soon as it's dark enough, I'll start peppering the scene with light. So we put up various 8x8 and 4x4 blackouts, floppies behind camera to really stop any daylight coming into the bar. But it also meant that we could only shoot one way. We're only doing over his shoulder, more like a little bit sidey on him, wide looking this way, and then like a close-up on her. That's it, yeah. Nice. We're not really doing a turnaround.
So this all kind of stays the same then, doesn't
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we're essentially just shooting one direction. For the underlight, we had dados placed along on the floor. And if you just put on some diffusion, such as half grid cloth, then that then softens it up quite a lot, which we ended up doubling up because we just felt it was too hard coming up onto their faces, which essentially became a full grid cloth. And then after this, we're gonna add a gel to it because we're going quite colourful in this scene. But we can be a bit more precise with these lights rather than a soft source, which will obviously spill out quite a lot. So as the top light in this scene, we used a 2x2 foot LED mat, which had a softbox on it, as well as a half grid cloth. And we also used the special steel blue gel as well. References for this scene were things like Only God Forgives, where there's a really famous bar scene with multiple colours being used. We wanted to have contrasting colours that really had a very colourful, impactful look to it. Because you obviously have cooler colours in the darks and then warmth in the highlights. Teal and orange are contrasting, oranges and yellows are complementary. So just decide what your scene entails and what the mood and environment is for that scene. I'm white balancing to tungsten because we've got tungsten lights on the ground. This is bi-colour, so I can set this to tungsten, and then on camera I'll decide what white balance I want. I could base it at 3200 or I can shift it, but we'd most likely go to 3200 to match the light, so then the gels show like how they're supposed to. As soon as you add a gel onto any light, you then have to white balance your camera to that light, essentially for the gel to show that it's proper colour. Sometimes you'll be in a location where there's existing practicals and you actually have to offset all of the lights that you're bringing with you to match those practicals. So you might have to add a quarter or a half plus green gel to match the slightly green practical lights. After you've added those green gels, you then can offset that in camera by doing minus green in camera to make it more magenta. So then your overall green room and green scene is then neutral. This dado can be here on him. And then if we can get another one, and I just want it washing on there. So they can just be a stand up here. I don't know whether I do that or I do teal. Yeah, with things like this, you just play around until you get what you want. And you don't want to add too many colours, otherwise it becomes like a circus. And that dado splashed light onto the bottles and onto the brickwork, but we also added the special steel blue as well. And that contrasted very nicely with the orange on his face, but separated his head from that wall. We had a top light, which was just our general lighting for the scene. And then we had accents of colour. So that was mainly the uplights on the bartender's side and the drinker's side. And then we had a little bit of splash of colour in the background. So here we are turning the lights on one by one to see what the gels and diffusions are doing. Here you can see the existing LED lights that are lighting up the bottles behind the bar. This is our top light with a special steel blue, which was a light matte 2x2 foot. Behind the bar we have on 2 dado lamps with full grid cloth and deep straw gel. On our side of the bar, the deep straw gel full grid cloth on a dado. And on the background wall, we have another dado with special steel blue on. The cameras was set to 5600 Kelvin. Any tungsten was always going to appear warm. With the added deep straw gel as well, it was even warmer. And that created a really nice color and texture on the skin tones. Here is the uplights with no gel and no diffusion. Here is the top light with no gel whatsoever. You can see the light on the back wall with no gel on. I think what's really nice in this scene is the bokeh that's created by using a longer lens onto the bartender. And you'll find that when using longer lenses and at shallow T-stops such as T2. So it's always something to think about. If you're using wider lenses with full frame, yes, you get that shallow depth. But with the longer lenses, you're more likely to see more bokeh in the background. Sometimes you might think you don't really need gels, but often you'll be in a corner up against it. You'll need those bits of diffusion, you need those bits of gels to color correct or give that certain look that you want. So if you want it to feel a little bit grimier and grittier, you add a bit of green or teal to it. You want those little accents of color, and sometimes if your lights aren't RGB, then they can't do that. So you need the gels. So there you have it, there's our nighttime bar scene. Thanks for watching.